Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Iron Canon Podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network for in-depth discussion on the lore of the High Republic and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew. I am coming to you live from Underworld North Studio in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. As always, I am joined across the continent by your friend of mine, Mr. Joel Davis, down in Underworld, Orange County. Joel, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. It's actually pretty decent weather for once, so that was nice. But overall, doing good. Doing good. I had quite a week last week, but I'll get to that soon.
Yeah, we'll get into that very shortly. The weather here in Toronto is pretty great. In Toronto, summer doesn't start end until October, so we kind of luck out there. It's gonna watch it be snowing tomorrow. Just watch it snow tomorrow. There we go. It starts snowing out in the prairies by this point, but it's doing all right here. I got the plugs out of the way. Oh, first off, gotta tell you what we're doing today. What are we talking about today? We're talking about Star Wars.
I thought we talked about Star Trek.
So I was wearing a Picard t-shirt all day today. And I'm getting really excited for the Star Trek panel. Anyway, Star Wars, there's a lot of it, and even some of the last 10 years of the Disney canon. So surely some stories are more important than others, and so that raises the question:
we don't
how do we
believe in egalitarianism in Star Wars.
Right. It's like just in the way narrative works, the way story works, some are going to be more important than others, especially in paper where things are more relative and whatnot. So how do we define and determine which hold more weight? What are the fine side quests and which bridge the gap between the two? And are there any more metaphors that we can use to organize this sprawling multi-generational saga from the galaxy far, far away? So yeah, we got another classic Iron Canon deep dive for you as we seek to answer those very questions. Now we'll get to the plugs. Out of the way, you can follow us Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Iron Canon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD, here on the Underworld YouTube channel. We've got YouTube memberships and we got super chats. So please do support the channel, support the network as you are willing and as you are able. We do have, the chat is on, chat is live. Be nice, be kind. If you make a comment that fits in the flow of the conversation, we'll do our best to integrate it in. If you give us a super chat, we'll put you right at the top of the pile and get to it immediately or as soon as humanly possible. But yeah, definitely all support is appreciated. Also, speaking of the Star Wars Underworld network, etc., and Star Wars Underworld fandom fam, as I like to call it, we got the Discord link in the description down below. Some great conversations still going on, always going on in there. I get notifications all the time in a good way, in good, happy notifications, different folks chiming in on different things, sharing different things. If you want to learn Japanese, there's if you're going to Japan, you're going to Celebration or not, you want to learn Japanese, there's a channel in there that I'm starting to pay more attention to because I'm going to Japan. Right, got to figure that out. I got to get my airfare, hotel. Anyway, speaking of Discord, there's usually game nights, usually different things. Anything going on soon or recent?
Last week we had a fun game night. We played some Fortnite. This week nothing because this is the meeting week, and I think next week probably another game night. So look forward to that.
Right on. So definitely check that out. Keep it locked. So join the Discord, and you'll definitely get an announcement about what that game night is, what it entails, where to go find it. Last but not least, I got another podcast. I do 2 of these a week now. Never since September around then. Last September. Been doing this for a year. Tractor Beam Comics reviews every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Chris Abbott and I review the comics that came out that day in Star Wars. And this week we got a doozy. High Republic Adventures number 10. So continuing on with that story, but most importantly, the true ultimate grand finale of the comics of this era, our theater number 50 of 50, written by Greg Pak and company. And so we're gonna dive right in, chat all about it, and probably look back on the on this era of comics, but on that Vader run specifically. I'm after last week's kind of head scratcher. I'm looking forward to a real narrative ending to this whole era and cap that off. So please do check that out right here, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Underworld YouTube channel and Facebook and Twitch and Iron Canon Twitch as well. All right, I believe that's all for the plugs out of the way. Joel, you had a week. You had a fun week.
I
Tell
did
us.
have a week. I didn't do much. I just I went to Batu. I got arrested by
Why
the
not?
snipers. I was speeding,
Oh,
but it's what you do. No, yes, I went to Galaxy's Edge for the first time. It was amazing. Here's another picture. Here's me in front of the Jedi on Dar store.
mhm.
Picture of that. Here's a picture of me building my droid, who I have in my room. I couldn't bring out sadly to show you, but it works. It's very fun. We actually had I have more videos on Discord if you want to go see it. But
Yeah,
during the night, where there was like a nice little empty space, we just drove around the droid around like the Millennium Falcon area,
nice.
all around. During there, they also had like this special event for the Make a Wish kids. So we took some pictures of that, and we ran in, and we didn't run into, but we took a picture of Josh Damaro, the head of the Disney parks, potential successor to Bob Iger. So it's like,
Mhm.
dang, big important people right there. I
Yeah.
took that. My dad took that picture,
Nice.
and I have a little souvenir that I bought from Doc on Dar store. I got this bust of Darth Bane.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. So
That's
yep,
pretty sweet.
I know. So now it's on my living room.
Since when do you like Sith? You like Sith? Sith
I
lore?
yeah, I had to. It's like there's the
Yeah.
Emperor or Vader, like Darth Bane, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get to find Darth Bane anything. So
Mm.
yeah, I had a week. I went to Disneyland. It was just so much fun,
Mhm.
and I got to see Galaxy's Edge for the first time. And I ran to Kylo Ren. I saw Rey and Vi, and there was this great show at night. It's like just so fun just to be there and vibe. It just felt so good.
Did you feel like you were in Star Wars?
For the most part, yeah, just kind of looking around and just like
Yeah.
the vibe and the feel. Like the minute you go into the cave and you hear the oohs and the
Yeah.
just especially at nighttime. Nighttime was a lot of fun, just kind of being
Yeah.
there. But no, it
Good.
was great.
Yeah. It's pretty magical. Like for me, it's the buildings that get me because you don't get that kind of architecture, at least not in North America. I don't know where else in the world, but like such distinctly Star Wars architecture.
Hmm.
And you're there and you're in it. Yeah, the Falcon's there, but you're looking up the whole docking bay and the whole um dock on Dars, and then just the way the buildings are rounded like that. Yeah, it's like out of a movie. You're placed right into it. I always like this guy or
Hmm.
this. I'm kind of curious. I wonder. I'm sure she has a story somewhere, but kind of random. Like amidst all the like Doc Ondar, this kind of nefarious sort of underworld fellow, and here he is having a massive Jedi bust in front of his store. Being very very hopeful, a lot of light in life, even though he's kind of a bit of a scoundrel. So that was great. How long were you able to stay there? Did you stay there like just
Oh,
in Galaxy's Edge?
oh, we had to go see the whole park, but we were there till like we came at like 12 o'clock and we left around 11 o'clock at night. So
Nice.
we were there mostly all day.
Mhm.
In the show for the Make a Wish kids was very cool too.
Nice.
So it was a special event. You can go look at it on Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah.
It's out there. But like, yeah, it's like you see the official pictures. It's like we were right there behind the cameras. Like me and my dad were watching all the pictures being taken, and it was bizarre but fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great thing that they do for the kids there.
And oh, that's right. One more
like,
thing.
yeah.
I played tic tac toe with the Mandalorian. He beat me.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, too bad, but also nice.
We shook
Sure.
hands and said, "This is the way."
There we go. And this is Chewie right here. Is it supposed to be Chewie in the background there? Or?
Yeah, that's Chewy.
Okay.
It's all Chewy
Chewie.
there. It's all Chewy. It's all R2.
Nice. Yeah. And last question. Your droid, is it kind of a BB-8 model or is it an R2 model?
That's a BB-8 model.
Nice. So how does it roll around?
Oh, this is the remote. There's actually the woman's handling your remote right there, and it's like,
okay, so it's kind of like those little smaller toys, but
yeah, but it's really interactive, very lifelike too.
nice.
And when you're there, the droid's like alive because of like Bluetooth stuff they got around the park.
That's right. Yeah. Connect things there. Fun times. Well, that's great to see. That's great to see you're able to get there, dive into this wild meta experience that is Galaxy's Edge. I can't wait to go back.
Me too. I would love to go
Yeah.
with you one day, like the two of
Yeah.
us together. Imagine that Ion Cannon goes to Batu.
There we go. We'll do a well because I mean we did outside of the what's it called in downtown Disney
Yeah,
out
that
of the store.
resistant space store.
There was some space in downtown Disney, so we'll record something else in Batu. I wonder if that's has that ever been done? Someone's recorded a podcast in Galaxy's Edge. I'm sure they have.
I
I mean, people do.
know,
There's Disney people who do, but like just any old Star Wars podcast.
not a podcast, but I saw Kyle Katarn do a vlog with his
Yeah.
partner about it. And like they would always have like an edit where like they're sitting near like a private area just talking to each other. So it's
Mhm.
part vlog, part podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess people do vlogs and Disney vloggers, and those are fun. But yeah, definitely I gotta figure out how to get back there. Maybe Celebration 2027 might be too long from now, but that'll be fun times. I mean, I don't have a week in Star Wars, but I'll say New York Comic Con. Speaking of cons, I'm just revving to go. I keep talking about On Track Room every single week because Chris and I will be there at New York Comic Con on the ground for what's shaping up to be pretty momentous for Star Wars publishing. We might well hear what is next in the comics, in Star Wars comics, and some more Star Wars publishing news. They always come out. Marvel, publishing paper canon always comes out at New York Comic Con. So I'm already planning kind of my time there. So that's I guess kind of my week in Star Wars. I do have a little bit. I ended up watching Rebuild the Galaxy. Yeah, you said you haven't quite finished it yet,
I
but
saw the first 2 episodes.
okay. So we'll do a quick one, quick thoughts this week, and then I'll probably watch it again, and then we'll be more extensive look back. Maybe I don't know if I necessarily need to do the whole episode on it next week, but we'll see because we don't quite know what we're doing next week. I forget.
I know
That's
what we're
okay.
doing. I do.
Oh, you know what we're doing. Okay, you'll let me know. Maybe put in the private chat because I'm sure we talked about it. I know we've planned something, but let me know. Yeah, I'll say my first impression about Rebuild the Galaxy, definitely a great story, moving story. The initial appeal to it were the jokes, were kind of the what if. And it's funny, they revealed most of them in the trailer. Like uh the Akbar trap and Darth Jar Jar. And even we knew there would be like a Jedi Vader, a white Vader, whatever. So it kind of the fact that we knew they were coming meant it was a little less funny, a little less goofy. The Akbar trap, those were great. It's a trap. It's a trap. It's the cloned Akbar. It's always interesting. I mean, we'll kind of maybe get to this. We'll get to this in a few moments, actually. But like Visions, to just completely go outside of any sort of canon that we know. And this definitely goes farther than I say it's like Star Wars What If, but it definitely goes farther than Infinities. It goes farther than what Marvel's What If does for Marvel. It really kind of upends just a lot of different relations and a lot of different things. It's almost closer to Star Trek thing, mirror universe in that way. Good and evil are kind of the characters are kind of flipped, except for Lucan and Leia tend to be they're kind of the same at the core of their characters, and so that was fascinating to see that be the case. Yeah, the drama between the two brothers, it's in a way, I don't spoil it, but it's in a way it's sort of derivative in that Star Wars is always about drama between family, but then also uh, you can say it's derivative, or you could say it taps into this tradition that this drama between family. There's a great moment with. I'll spoil one thing. A great moment with Luke and Jedi Vader, and Leia. So kind of reminding us about that, but yeah, family being on the opposite sides of a conflict, even to some extent with Rey and Ben Solo in the canon saga sequel trilogy, making me think of that in a different way. So it was good. This version of that story. So in the version of those themes,
I got some
Yeah,
thoughts
we've played
about the
it.
first couple
Yeah.
episodes.
So yeah, of what you have seen. Yes, that is what we're doing next week. Of what you have seen, what would you think?
I think that you compare this to Vision. I think the difference between like a Visions and Lego is I think these Lego things, especially
Mhm.
this one, but even the Christmas specials kind of have this too.
Yeah.
All the Lego ones to some extent do. They really have their pulse on fan discourse.
Hmm.
Um, like look at the way the opening, right? Like it's this dude, like he's a Star Wars fan. He talked about the epic story. It's
Yeah.
like, it's like, and then it's like he's like, like he's telling the story of like, at once upon a time there was this kid named Anakin. Then he became the most evil person in the river, Darth Vader. And then the Emperor, he came and he took over stuff, but then he died. But then he kind of came back, and then Rey, who's kind of a Skywalker, fights him, and yay, and then all that sort of
Mhm.
stuff. Like it's the best story ever, and it's like the way he had what the hell with the Wookiees, and like actually the Ewoks. It's like, oh right, the Ewoks. Right, like it's got that almost like you can tell that the whoever wrote this, oh I forget, the famous comedian Bobby
Who
Not
wrote it?
Bobby, not Bobby.
Bobby Monahan. I
That's
mean, she's in it, right? He's
no, I forget whoever wrote this. Like very much kind of knows the discourse among Star Wars nerds.
yeah.
I think like, and to me the one that really stood out, weirdly enough, was when people are like, you tell the same story every time, and
Yeah.
then the guy, and then the main character goes, okay, well maybe next time I'll tell the story of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Ooh, it's like
Yeah.
I love it. Like yeah, Thrawn's kind of like the other kind of big story moment there. Um,
Yeah.
so like I always felt like these Lego things are almost like winking at the camera, like they kind of know what Star Wars discourse among the movies are, and kind of just. I mean, that's what like a Darth Jar Jar. That's the reason why Darth Jar Jar is a thing, and Darth
Yeah.
Nubs. That is the ultimate kind of. We don't actually think this, obviously. I mean, I hope some of us don't. But it's like we like to make fun of that as fans. Like, what if
Yeah.
Nubs, the cute innocent bear, was a Sith Lord? I mean, I make that joke all the time. Darth
Yeah.
Nubs, Plagueis' master. I think
It's
we got
funny.
Darth Rose on here for some reason. I mean, hey, that'd be awesome. So it's like these Lego specials. I think are like the only way we can. Well, not the only way. Actually, I get this even more subtle. Like we can so directly just make fun of fandom discourse about
Yeah.
everything from like are Ewoks cool or not? Is Rey a Skywalker? The Palpatine cloning come back to life thing, right? Like we make fun of that, but in a sorry, there's a dog barking me up there. But in like in a very cheeky kind of way. It's not like that doesn't come off as like mean spirited. Just
Yeah.
um, whereas with Visions, I think it's just sort of like forget the lore. It's like here are Star Wars' core themes of life, love, life, and environment. We'll just run with it. So if anyway, Visions is a lot more serious, while Lego can be a lot more. Look at these nerds and what they talk
Yeah.
about half the time. This is like it's like even the lore. It's like I'm sure there's a joke of people making fun of kind of like us, like oh the canon is ruined. You screwed it up or something like that. I don't know. Somebody would probably make or the sacred
Kiadi
text.
Mundi's age. How old is he?
I know. I don't think. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe that wasn't. I don't think. I don't know if there is a joke about Kiadi Mundi's age, or if there would have been enough time.
Not in the Lego, but I mean, what people with the acolyte being all up
Oh,
around.
that. But if the timeline for the production had worked out, that would have been a joke, right? Like, how old
Yeah.
is Kiadi Mundi? Is he even supposed to be born yet? So that's sort of my kind of takeaway from these Lego things. Are like they're meta in like the most obvious ways of like.
Mhm.
They know Star Wars fans and they know what we talk about, and
Yeah.
it's kind of we get to laugh at ourselves a little bit and have fun,
Yeah.
but
That's
not
it.
like a mean way.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't say making fun of, but poking fun at,
Right.
and poking fun at ourselves. I mean, even like the Darth Jar Jar theory, it was such a great theory. Completely wrong, completely off, but definitely a great theory. Completely takes away from the fun and the charm of that character. But a great theory, and it's funny. There is a line in there. What a ridiculous idea, Darth Jar Jar. What a ridiculous idea. But yeah, poking fun at poking fun at how seriously we take these things, but it's us because it's Star Wars fans poking fun at ourselves, right?
Right.
We can take something so seriously if we're able to not take ourselves so seriously. It's kind of how like the moderation of the blunting the edge off of things that this fandom so desperately needs, especially
And
the
it's in
last few
Lego, so
weeks.
we can.
Exactly. Lego. I will say again, the story does get serious, so keep watching. Um, it does get as serious as any Star Wars does. I think with the thing with the comparison divisions, yeah, I mean it does pick up on the core themes of Star Wars in meaningful ways, even though it doesn't, fit within the rules, if you will, of how Star Wars tends to work. Like even, I mean, the world between worlds in canon, the actual story, that pushes it. That's pushing the limits, right?
Oh yeah.
Mortis is a little bit pushing the limits. So this brick that undoes the fabric of reality, that's going beyond the limits, right?
But you
That's
can do that in Lego in a way you can't do that with regular Star Wars.
exactly right. And that's why with Lego, it's like, yeah, okay, that's great. This is the right place to do that, to play with things, especially because it's something internal to Lego, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have Lego's always about things. I meant to grab a brick separator. I don't know if you've gotten this. Have you seen the ship yet?
The
Darth Dev's ship.
No, I don't think I have.
Okay.
Or maybe I have in the trailer.
If it looks weird, uh, let me know when you get to it. If you figure out what it is,
Okay.
tell me what you think it is. What it's supposed to look like.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I was thinking also about the holiday spectrum was like
Yeah.
the Lego holiday spectrum, not the
Yeah.
and it's like, there's actual time travel. Like Ray literally goes back in
Yeah.
time. Like if that happened in regular Star Wars, we'd be throwing a conniption.
Yeah.
But because it's Lego, it's like, yeah, of course, he can run into Lego Darth Vader and Lego Emperor and Lego Kylo Ren can all kind of team up and it'd be silly.
Yeah. So all that to say then is, I mean, the thing about again with Visions, the Vision does so well, that Rebuild the Galaxy does so well, is it steps outside of kind of the normal rules in order to remind us of the themes and the ideas, and it is so grounded. That's why it can step outside, but still feel so grounded, and connected to what Star Wars is, because it gets at the themes. And I mean, again, Luke and Leia, especially, they remain themselves even if they're in different circumstances.
Right.
And so, yeah.
I
So
just want to. Oh,
no good.
I just wanted to comment one more time. I think my favorite joke so far is the Thrawn joke. I really feel like it just says, "You made it, Thrawn. You were the hardcore nerd favorite from Star Wars fans for decades, and
Yeah.
because people really want you back in canon, you're back, and now you're like this big deal among the fans, and like
Sure.
even this dude kind of represents the Star Wars generic fan. It's like, okay, what about a Thrawn? He's a big deal." They've been
Has
they've
there
been
been
giving
a throne? So good.
they've been getting some good jabs at Thrawn lately and kind of how overhyped he is. Even Rise of the Fall of the Empire got like a few Thrawn jabs of like Thrawn is like one of the most biographed military leaders of Star Wars, so we're not going to go that deep into him. And there's
Yeah.
another line in the book where like an Imperial officer goes, "If I have to hear about that blue-skinned alien one more time, I'm gonna." But what are we gonna ask? Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, has there been a Thrawn minifig? I guess there has been, like an official. Yes, there has been. There has been an official Thrawn set.
I think so.
Like there's this like Ahsoka Tano duel, and yeah, there's a Thrawn minifigure there. Okay, like in like in duel on Protea. That's a cool
Lars
set.
Mickelson would Lars Mickelson voice his Lego half? I hope he does. If they would get
Or
Thrawn.
get Mark Thompson to do it.
Well, that'd be cool. Yeah, I can get Mark Thompson to do that. Maybe like make a joke. It's like
Yeah.
he sounds a little different, but also more classic.
Well, no, I mean in the canon Thrawn books, he's a dead ringer for Lars Mickelson. Like
Well, that's true.
he's dead on. Like I can't tell the difference.
I mean, I'm always used to his Heir of the Empire voice, where it's a little different. I'm used to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but no.
Yeah. A lot on that note, the Rey voice, I was convinced that was Daisy Ridley. I didn't know it was someone else. So also hats off to her. I should actually check that out. Give credit where credit's due.
Did Kelly Marie Tran voice Darth Rose, or did Darth Rose have a lot of?
Let's see here. So let's see this cast here.
I haven't gotten to that part, but I know it's a thing. So.
Yeah, she's Kelly Marie Tran, Naomi Aki, as Janna.
Oh, she must be having a ball. It's like, I get to voice Rose of the Dark, the Sith Lord. Heck yeah! But
Yeah.
that's what I'd be.
Yeah, Darth Ray is not Daisy Ridley. It's Helen Sadler.
I wonder if she does like the Battlefront voice in video games.
Yeah, maybe. Good job to Helen Sadler. There you go. Definitely. So everyone else, yeah, I mean, D. Bradley Baker as Wicket and Nubs. Anthony Daniels, the 3PO. Palpatine, Vader, both the same as the Lego folks who do them.
I love their voices. I love their Lego
Matt
voices.
Sloan. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of. I mean, that's the first thing we hear of Vader after James Earl Jones, which is interesting. So.
I guess, yeah. I mean, Lego Vader is such a different character. It's kind of hard to because he's like a goofball. Even when he's bad guy.
Yeah. So everyone else, yeah. So we'll do more on that next week when we both had a chance. When I've had a chance to watch it again, you've had a chance to finish it. You had a pretty big week. You went to bed too.
Yeah.
You got arrested. You have to do some time in an Imperial prison on Batu or a First Order prison.
Stormtroopers arrest you for speeding. They give speeding tickets.
First Order prison. Did he actually say anything, or you're just being silly?
No. I mean, no. Someone actually did say to me, like, "Hey, be careful, those stormtroopers. They give out speeding tickets."
That's good. That's pretty funny. Fun times. All right. I think are we good with Rebuild the Galaxy for now? We'll get back to it next week.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Weightier moments. A weight has fallen upon me. Can carry the weight of this story. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead. Take it away.
So heavy.
Right.
All right. Star Wars. There's a lot of it. There's a ton of it. And we are not an egalitarian franchise. My lefty impulses are
well, that's just, hold on. Like, that's just how story works.
I know. So, Maggie and I are going to do a fun little thought experiment. And the thought experiment will simply be that a friend comes to us and asks and says, I want to experience everything in Star Wars, and I want to do it in order from the most important to the least important thing. And they're going to first watch everything and then read everything, because that would be easier. And I don't doubt that, because, there's less stuff to watch and a lot more stuff to read. I would almost say at this point, it might be impossible to read everything, because you're going to have to find a bunch of little things in the Insider, and we count those, and the little comics and the whatnots. Like, good luck trying to read all of Legends. It's like, there's like... Anyway, point is, so we're going to we're not going to rank things per se, but we are going to kind of talk about the various installments in Star Wars from like the most weight to the least weight. And I want to make clear just at the front, just because we say something is weightier does not mean it might be your favorite or even technically the best. We just think in terms of narratives that this has a lot more weight to it, right? Like, Young Jedi Adventures is not going to be at the top, but I know people who love Young Jedi Adventures to death, and that's probably their favorite thing in Star Wars. So let's just, so everyone out there is getting mad, who says like, oh, you didn't put this at the most weighty thing. There's a reason why, okay? All right. So with that said, let's just begin. So, most obvious thing ever is, of course, just the saga. Start with the saga. Don't even, like, it doesn't matter. Chronological, alphabetical, release order, whatever.
No, there would be what alphabetical order.
Where would you? I guess would you start with A New Hope? Do you start with A New Hope? Because like A New
or
Hope.
Is it Star Wars? Is it Star Wars? What do you call it?
I don't know. I would have to like. I'm gonna do that later.
Me too. Yeah, I gotta watch out of this time. Alphabetical. That's pretty great.
I didn't even mean to say that. I just meant Russian doll order.
Yeah.
So you start with the saga. It's the crux of Star Wars. Everything springs from it. Everything runs from it, or not runs from it. Is based off it. You start with the saga. No ifs, ands, or buts. If you start with the saga, keeled over, passed away, you would have pretty much gotten your Star Wars experience. I hope that doesn't happen. But yeah, no arguments there from you, Matthew. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's tier 1. Now, everything else is where things get a
So
little more.
I guess the
Okay,
question is, you mean the 9 films
yeah, 9 films,
specifically? Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. Like yeah, the saga,
Mm,
the
yeah.
Skywalker saga. You
Yeah.
start there.
Mhm.
Um, so this is where things get interesting because this is where I think we can get a little bit more debatey
Yeah.
on the tiers. And to be fair, these tier systems are kind of just arbitrary on my part. I did, again, this isn't really a ranking, but again, I mean, it's kind of a ranking, but it's not.
Mhm.
Um, so after that, it's a choice between either, in my opinion, the Clone Wars cartoon or the Kenobi show. I
Mm.
went back and forth myself when I made this list on whether or
Yeah.
not Clone Wars stands alone or not. And it could be made to see if it does. Um, I I would say you probably want to do Clone Wars second because it really is. And now that I think about it, um, this is why I
Yeah.
would say maybe it does maybe stand alone a little bit more than even say Kenobi. Weirdly, is because it is sort of the last thing George Lucas worked on, Star Wars
Yeah.
himself. Oh, it sounds a little sad. It's like, oh, it's like
Yeah.
he's still with us. But it's like this is the last thing he worked on with Star Wars. So
Mhm.
this really is the last time we see kind of Lucas's perspective of his own universe, his own
Yeah.
galaxy, and you know, uh, kind of a lot of things will be stemming from this afterwards. So there are a lot of threads and storylines and stuff like that
Yeah.
that do originate from here. So this is why I would suggest you would watch this next in terms of its importance. Which is funny because if I were just recommending people off the fly to watch Star Wars without importance, I actually would recommend Clone Wars later because Clone Wars can be a little bit difficult to get into
It's
compared to some of
long.
the stuff. It's long. It's the animation. If you're very picky about your
Yeah.
animation, you kind of got to get into it. So
Mhm.
but I would definitely put this next. And thinking about it now, kind of looking at my own notes, I might lower Kenobi a tier because of just Clone Wars is Lucas's last thing. Matthew, do
Mhm.
you want to step in and mention
Yeah.
anything? Yeah,
So
I've talked too much.
here's the thing. I say, because what you have here listed
Mhm.
multiple things in one tier, and I'd say definitely both Clone Wars and Kenobi. And here's why:
Mhm.
is they're both, uh, one of the things we had to learn to do in our minds since 1999 was to see. I have this T-shirt in my drawer. I almost pulled it out. Hashtag prequels. I say this so many times, but we had to learn that it wasn't these 4, 5, 6 films and then our tier one and then 1, 2, 3 or tier two. It's not how it works. It's not what George Lucas was doing. It's not the story he was telling. It's 1 to 6. Now it's 1 to 9. What both Clone Wars and Kenobi do to our perception is tie everything together. And
Right.
so Clone Wars especially does so much work. Well, so Kenobi, it's more literal in that Kenobi is the pivot from
It's a bridge
lamenting.
series, very much. It's a
Yeah,
bridge.
but it is the pivot, and so it's in that way it's the tie between lamenting Anakin and turning to hoping for Luke,
And
right?
Leia.
And Leia, but um, ultimately the way the story goes, at least, is it needs to actually, everyone needs to be watching out for Luke and everything that he hopes he'll become for the galaxy, which of course we also see in one episode in Rebels. Uh, that Twin Suns is almost, you can say, an epilogue to Kenobi more than anything. Um,
Kind of.
yeah, so I would still put Kenobi in tier two there. What
Okay.
Clone Wars for me is, um, uh, uh, yeah, it is. I mean, that was the linchpin of my prequels conversion in seeing it as such a main story, in part because it builds it out, gives us so much more time in that era, makes it so much more familiar to us.
Mhm.
And so just for that sheer reason alone, does a lot of work in getting us to see it as part of the main story. Because yeah, that's really, yeah, one of the ways we perceive that. Um, and it's as you said, it's underneath the whole thing with the last thing George worked on. this was his opportunity to really come out and say a lot of what he wanted to say about Star Wars. So
Got to
about
explore his universe quite a bit.
yeah, but you know yeah, he says this in Empire Strikes Back, but about the dark side being faster and more seductive. Well, we see Anakin choosing stabbing on the man. I remember that that mark on the Duchess Satine's ship, stabbing the guy in the back, and Kevin Kiner right on cue has the Vader theme right there. That's in Clone Wars, right? Mortis and the whole composition of the galaxy, and again the explorations of light and dark, and the importance of the priority of the light. I would say that's in Clone Wars. He's able to do that in Clone Wars. Um, and then of course everything it sets up, like you're saying, for Maul coming back in Solo, for example, and and of course everything to do with Ahsoka from in Rebels, in of course in Ahsoka, in the Mandoverse, all those things. Yeah, it sets up all those stories as well, but yeah, showing the way it gives time for the Obi-Wan Anakin relationship, for just the very existence of Ahsoka herself as this character that has come to have such a central place in the galaxy, in the story, in the Skywalker mythos. Yeah, Clone Wars does all the heavy lifting there in her character growth. And then there's one more thing I wanted to say. Shoot.
Well, I'll say that also. I put these so high because they very much actually star saga characters. Well, there's an exception to this rule, and we'll get to that in a bit. And I'll explain my reasoning at least for why that's there. But when you start out Clone Wars, Anakin, Obi-Wan, they're on the cover, and obviously Kenobi is, Kenobi and Vader's story. So,
I think maybe one of the things I was going to say was, the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan that we see built up and then ripped apart in Revenge of the Sith, that we continue to see haunting, but we continue to haunt Anakin, haunt Vader in A New Hope. So yeah, that the whole rise of the Empire, the consolidation of power in Palpatine. So yeah, it's right below. I would put it right below the saga, and then Kenobi being the bridge. If I remember if I think that was what I wanted to say. If it comes to me, doesn't matter where we are in this episode, I'll go back and I'll mention it.
Okay, that's fine. So the next tier I sort of decided and again, these tiers are arbitrary. I just made them up on the fly. I wasn't quite sure how we would organize this conversation, so this was that.
I changed some things too and added my thoughts too. So
that's fine. I actually have some questions. I actually have a debate about 3.5. But the next one I call them. I would very much consider this list saga adjacent stories. Because they don't really star the saga characters, even though sometimes they appear. In Rogue, and these stories are Rogue One, Rebels, and Acolyte. Although sometimes they appear. Mon Mothma, technically she appears in the saga, so technically that counts. Obi-Wan appears, but it's like it's not about them. It's not about you, Mon Mothma. It's not about Obi-Wan Kenobi. And Plagueis, of course. But it's about these. It's the narrative of these stories are obviously these other characters, right? About Jyn and her relationship with her father, and Acolyte, obviously the story of the twins, Osha and May. Plagueis is in the background, and then obviously you've had this show continued. We maybe have gotten it might have gone up a bit higher because we got the Plagueis stuff, obviously going on. Rebels is another one where that to me is that's very much saga adjacent because of obviously it's what plays a role in setting up some stuff for the saga. A little bit less than Rogue One, kind of like Rogue One. If you had to pick which three, if I had to pick which three in order, that's a hard one.
Yeah,
like I would, because sort of like I probably would have to pick Rogue One first because that ties so much into A New Hope. It goes, next 5 seconds you should watch A New Hope.
Yeah.
Then probably Acolyte, because that's such an episode 0 kind of a situation. And then probably Rebels after that,
Mhm.
because it's like Rebels ties in to stuff, but I feel like in some ways it's building around the saga. It's kind of doing
Yeah,
its own kind. It's kind of the backdrop to what's the Mandoverse and the Thrawn saga, as I'm calling it, kind of is happening. So it weaves in and then kind of weaves out at the same time. Um, that would, but but they're all kind of in that sort of saga adjacent area
yeah,
in terms of weightiness. But what do you think, Matthew? Am I off?
yeah. I'll say so. If Clone Wars and Kenobi are kind of in the middle of the saga and like a transition moments, and it really even Clone Wars is a transition moment from Republic to Empire, right?
Oh yeah,
Maul says,
they're bridge series, as I would.
Maul says at the end, "Look around you. The Republic has already fallen." There, um, yeah. Rogue One, Rebels look and Acolyte look toward the saga. Rogue One and Rebels look toward A New Hope. Acolyte looks toward the whole saga. It looks back to a publishing initiative, and that's kind of this weird wild card because Acolyte is the most, as I've said before, the most paper dependent and paper
But you wouldn't have to
connected.
know that in order to enjoy Acolyte,
No,
I think.
no, you wouldn't, but it definitely, yeah, it looks forward. Um, so one thing I did put in here, so I had tier 3.5 as Ahsoka. I bumped that up to tier 2.5 because
I don't
yeah.
know.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. It looks back. So like Rogue One, Rebels, and I could look forward. Ahsoka looks back more than, and I don't mean in viewing order. So that's the thing is, yeah, you need to see Rebels before you see Ahsoka. That's for sure. If you, I mean, you don't have to, but if you want to get a sense of the story, sense of the characters, you do. But the thing Ahsoka is looking back to, yes, she's looking back. Yes, the story, looking back to what happens in Rebels during the Empire. But that episode 5 is so key to the whole arc. I think it's gonna be key to next season as well. Of course, you have in next
Next
season you
season is
have
just Mortis live action, I guarantee it.
yeah, you have Mortis live action. So what that's doing is then looking back to this other animated series called Clone Wars, right?
Mhm.
But looking directly um, back, and everything Ahsoka has come through in that episode 5. She's rediscovered her childhood self. There are literally flashbacks, live action flashbacks of Clone Wars episodes. It's bonkers. But by your definition, there is a saga character. There's
True.
the saga character. This is the main character.
And I
And
wouldn't be surprised if he's in season 2 quite a bit. So
it is now. It's sort of Anakin. It's really what Anakin means to Ahsoka, what Vader means to Ahsoka. But what we're getting at here is the ongoing legacy of this character, Anakin Skywalker. And so, um, in the life of this one character, but also in Ahsoka, but whatever she's doing on Peridia, what she needs to sort out and figure out about the galaxy and the Force, and looking back on her experiences. So, I would say it's more it's more tied in. All it's closer tied in uh to the Star Wars the films than Rogue One, Rebels, Acolyte are. It's more tied in, closer tied in. It's not as tied in as Kenobi, but it's on in that realm. It's in that orbit. So that's why I say 2.5 because it's not looking forward. It's just looking back, but it's still looking back definitively to Revenge of the Sith, and then of course the Clone Wars.
I
So
think thematic. I think I'll need to see season 2.
yeah,
Maybe to agree with you completely because like season 1 though, there's still a lot of setup for Thrawn coming back and with the next wave of
yeah,
Mandoverse stuff
that's true.
and stuff. And obviously, this is just building off of the Mando. See, I guess my brain can't fathom not watching the Mandoverse in order at this point because I kind of, as much as
Yeah,
we all say they're separate shows, I just kind of consider the Mandoverse to be just the Clone Wars in live action. Like it's
sure.
a big show. It's like an anthology almost. Every season's like an arc, like of Clone
Mhm.
Wars almost. You could argue, and
Yeah,
we finally got the Ahsoka arc now.
I'll
How
say
you
this.
sort
What's tricky about the thought experiment
of
is there's an order of what's most least important. Now, what order, what makes sense to understand the story. And those two can be different things, right?
that's true because
You have to get to a certain point. You have to build to a certain point, and that's the thing. These different things kind of build into a certain point in the films. We'll talk about with Paper Canon, and what Joel and I have been talking, Chris and I, sorry, have been talking about for comics for the last year, building to the Palpatine version of the Jedi through the comics. Yeah,
although I have a bit of a different theory on that now these days about
yeah.
building around it, but that we'll get to that later.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that, but
Um,
yeah. So that's why I'd say, yeah. So it's true. There's also everything with Thrawn and everything that sets up because it's the first appearance of Thrawn in live action, and he really shows up. So yeah, I
again,
get your point there, but
and it's hard because like on the one hand, I do kind of get it because like this Ahsoka is so going to probably be a more direct tie-in to the Filoni film. Although actually,
yeah.
with what I hear of the Mandalorian Grogu, maybe not anymore. But I feel like
Mhm.
and then of course you got to, and of course you should watch the first 3 seasons of Mandalorian because that's just build up to that. So it's like
Yeah,
we're almost like Mando versus. I mean, I guess we can kind of get into the next part as well. Mando versus is so
sure.
tricky because we did like we are. You know how Star Wars Episode 4 and the original Star Wars, didn't show the prequels at first, and like we kind of like we just start in the middle right here, like
Yeah,
right kind of where the story starts. And then we know how we talked about how as much as we love Phantom Menace, the prequels kind of really do start with Attack of the Clones a little bit.
yeah,
I mean, I used to watch Episode 1, but like Phantom Menace is kind of the prologue in some ways.
yeah.
Mandoverse is very like that, where we didn't start where the action is. We have
Mhm.
kind of started in like the prologue or the prologue to the prologue, right? Where it's
You mean
like,
with Mandalorian season 1?
yeah, where it's like,
Yeah.
it's this small story. Moff Gideon's like this warlord.
Mhm.
And then season 2, we get a little bit more. It's like, here's the cloning. We get a little hint of Ahsoka. Ahsoka hints like where she's looking for Thrawn. So like, okay, something bigger
Mhm.
going on. Then Book of Boba Fett, kind of its own thing. But you still should watch it because, of course, Din and Grogu get reunited. Weird. Season
Yeah.
3, Mandalorian restored, but again, we know Moff Gideon is now like part of a wider conspiracy among Thrawn supporters, and then Ahsoka happens, and in terms of like the overarching narrative going on, Thrawn just comes back. He doesn't even really do anything against the Republic. He just kind of returns, and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, now I'm ready to do some stuff. Skeleton Crew is probably going to be its own thing, which is why in my notes I said, in terms of weight, it probably would be a bottom tier thing. So now I'm kind of understanding your point with Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And then Mandalorian and Grogu is probably just going to be the unofficial part 1 of the Filoni movie because obviously maybe there'll be some setup to Thrawn we don't know. And then who knows what Ahsoka season 2 is about and how that contributes to the overarching story. And then the Filoni film finally like, here's Thrawn, you're going to do the Thanos thing and then lose. So all that to say is the Mandoverse. This is one of the interesting things where it's like you have the Mandoverse itself as its own entity of weightness, and then within it, it's like, well, Ahsoka's definitely higher.
Yeah.
Skeleton Crew's low, probably going to be lower. I mean, I could be very wrong, and it could be like the most saga-defining thing ever. It could be tier 1. I kind of doubt it.
Well, no, nothing could be a tier 1.
No.
But
maybe tier 2, and then it's sort of like, Mandalorian's probably like somewhere in the middle because continue still building onto it. So
yeah.
it's this interesting thing because it's bridging, it's bridging 6 and 7, but it's not about the saga character with the exception of Boba Fett, but he's kind of doing his own thing, not really connected to anything else. And Luke Skywalker kind of shows up, but he's just kind of playing a supporting role for Grogu's arc to keep going. So
yeah,
I've rambled. So, but you got any thoughts on this? And did we skip anything with tier 3? Did you want to mention?
No, I mean I vaguely mentioned. Quickly mentioned Acolyte, but
okay.
Although Acolyte we could also talk about in Paper Canon. we'll mention. I'll come back to that. I'll say with Mandoverse, like where you're talking about starting small and expanding, that's exactly how Rebels starts. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It starts on Lothal with this cell, and then it builds out. So they're following a formula which works. It's not a bad formula.
I
Not
call it the
knocking it.
Filoni formula.
It makes sense. I mean, Clone Wars didn't need to do that. Clone Wars starts with the Battle of Christophsis, and yeah, but Rebels, yeah, Rebels and Mandoverse do that. Now we're into this kind of restored Mandalore. We're into we got with Moff Gideon and
The
the Imperial
Empire is
Overshadow,
about to do stuff.
the Imperial Remnant. Yeah, so definitely built up. Yeah, I mean, I definitely say it fits in here. Well, the one thing to say though is, um, I mean, part of our perception of this is the fact that Rogue One Rebels are leading to a film that we've had since 1977. It's a complete unit. Yeah, like leading to the whole saga, this complete unit, although the Acolyte. So we need that. We need the rest of that story. With Mandoverse, we don't actually know where this is all leading to. It could bump up all the way to tier 2. Here's why. Project Necromancer. And that's why Bad Batch is good. I'm glad the Bad Batch is in here too.
That's right. Bad Batch.
Everything that sort of sets up, even indirectly, creates the circumstances where the First Order happens, right?
Mhm.
And the Final Order happens. Everything we'll see finally with the New Republic and both its strengths and its inefficiencies and inabilities to adequately then respond to this First Order threat. Maybe if this is a big if, though, that's an if, right? If we see in the way they deal with Thrawn, this is the thing. How does the way they deal with Thrawn then affect the way they deal with the First Order? Because they don't really deal with the First Order. Leia has to bolt and actually take care of things herself.
And they got like 20 years left before Episode 7, so like it's not like we're that deep into the timeline even.
True. So there's a lot to go. And some things are probably going to have to be implied, or we'll have to interpret things. But yeah, I'd say right now the thing is that it started small. We're still only halfway there, basically.
We're getting there though. We're getting
we're definitely getting there. It's definitely expanded, but how much is it really? I mean, that'll be the next question that we've had is, how much is it really pointing to the sequel trilogy or not? Is it kind of being, and I think they're being intentionally being cautious and saying, there is a long ways to go. There's 20 years to go. We're not quite at Snoke's in a jar, but there's little things that are suggestive of it. And again, I think the big thing that'll be suggestive of it is, what is this? Is the politics? What is the state of the New Republic? Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I think we'll get what I noticed in paper canon and with comics a lot. The thing I've been thinking about with comics a lot is, how do the stories that these characters encounter in this comics era affect what they do in Return of the Jedi? It's kind of implied. How does again? I'll say this a third time. How does this confrontation with Thrawn affect where they are in whatever 20 years later? In that way, so that thing, if it is clear, here maybe this is the way of putting it. The clearer that answer is, the higher up the Mandoverse goes. If it's still vague and unsure, then kind of mid. The reason the Acolyte, for example, is higher up is because it's very clear. There's a very clear point with Vern here. That
Doug's
Vern
got Plagueis there too, just looking out.
Yeah, this guy named Darth Lord Plagueis here hanging out. But also with Vern and Soul, kind of the Jedi losing their way and losing their sense of how to be present with everyone in the galaxy. Again, not to bring up the whole are the Jedi the prequels villains debate. They aren't, but clearly it's pretty clear. Acolyte is saying something about how Order 66 happens, right? Um, will Mandover say something about how the First Order happens, and the Final Order happens, or not?
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
can be hard to synthesize these things in ways that are obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the reasons
True.
I love Rise and Fall of the Empire is
Mm.
that because it takes those sort of vague implications of things
Yeah.
and just outright says, "Oh yeah, this is how it affected everything." Like if I don't know, have you reread
I
Rise and
still
Fall?
haven't been able to read it yet. I haven't got time, but I
Get to
should.
the read the Crimson Dawn chapter
Okay.
because it will directly imply this is how the Crimson Dawn stuff affected the Empire and really kind of hurt them, so that
Interesting.
they collapsed so hard when the Emperor died. So like
Fascinating.
there's really synthesizing, how the
Mm-hmm.
Crimson Dawn stuff led into the events at Endor and even afterwards to that.
Yeah, I mean, does that have to do with Leia and Zara?
No, it actually has more to do with the Empire getting very paranoid of who's part of Crimson Dawn, so they just start randomly purging officers and
Interesting.
killing them,
Okay.
and that just leads to just bad morale in the army. And it's like
Yeah.
by the time of Endor, everybody's like, "Oh, we're so tired."
Yeah.
So
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
more
I'll
like
give that a
a
read.
Red Scare paranoia purge thing
Mm-hmm.
um, going on, and also just the loss of some troops and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always a little harder to kind of see kind of the bigger picture because ultimately,
Yeah.
it's about needling that thread of like we definitely want to imply that this is going to lead to the First Order,
Yeah.
but on the same time, we don't want to be just. I mean, Star Wars is not subtle, but we don't want Brendel Hux after watching Thrawn die go like, okay, First Order time, dun dun dun. It's like right or like
Yeah.
context. No, the First Order is about to be established, right? Like
Yeah.
it's sort of like you gotta still make the story at the end of the day. Sort of like why
Mm-hmm.
we can imply I mean we can
Sure.
get to this later part, but we can imply some stuff with the High Republic. But at the end of the day, the initiative's still a standalone enough story that we got to have that
Mm-hmm.
catharsis of we beat Marcion Row, we did it, we won. We may not go that hard into like, oh
Mm-hmm.
shoot, in 120 something years, Palpatine's got to execute Order 66 on us. You can't. It's really hard to synthesize all these very things sometimes.
Yeah.
So
So maybe I'll put it this
in
way.
in narrative,
Yeah. Um, there is bound to be then a story eventually, hopefully, that does connect the dots. And unlike Kenobi connecting the dots, this is going to be a tier 2 story that says this is how this really does lead into uh into the First Order, Final Order,
three
more
words.
so.
3 words. Luke's Jedi Academy.
Yeah, maybe it might be that. We'll see. And then everything. I mean, the Rise of Kylo Ren comic, even though it's a 4-issue comic, touches on that. But yeah, if we had a screen story dealing with that, that would be weightier than the Mandoverse. Then,
Yeah, because to me, Kenobi is a true bridge between
yeah,
episode 3 and 4. It
yeah,
really
sorry.
ties those together. Mandoverse is doing the tying. Don't get me wrong, and Bad Batch is doing the tying. It helps. We get to see Palpatine. Like, oh, he's been doing
Sorry.
this. You know,
Yeah,
this cloning thing since day one, maybe
mm-hmm.
even beforehand, quite frankly. But
Yeah.
it's sort of like it's in the ether of the world,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not the focus of the story. The focus is the clones just trying to make a life for themselves, and then Omega is going to join off the rebellion and do her thing.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
so like maybe it's like Hux being there helps with the world building and the implications,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of the day, Thrawn still has to be the villain,
Yeah,
and we have to defeat the immediate threat. We can imply stuff, and I think we
mm-hmm.
will imply a little bit more because obviously, unlike
Yeah,
say the High Republic, we don't have 100 years, we have like 20, so there's still definitely an inflection point here,
yeah,
and I think I think Thrawn's defeat will be an inflection point, but we're not going to start seeing the First Order flags start flying everywhere,
No,
and we might not see Palpatine at all.
I mean, yeah, I mean, again, maybe this is something that paper canon will have to do more of, like Claudia Gray already has with Bloodline, for example.
Or
But,
my hopefully one day Luke Jedi Academy animated
yeah,
show.
yeah. So
Please.
I mean, you had Clary Sinian going off the First Order, right?
Right.
I will say, what was I going to say? I was going to say something. Um, man, my brain's, I'm just blanking. That's what I'm going to say. One thing out of universe, real world point to be made here is, Mandalorian debuts in 2019. We, at that point, there's the possibility that Star Wars would be equally live action streaming and films. That the weight would be there. I think, again, I'm with you with your point that the Acolyte and the story there, or the cancellation of the Acolyte.
The potential for the story there.
So, but what as in I'm with you in that, as much as I'm salty about the Acolyte being canceled, it does signify a different return to a relationship between between TV and films, in which films are going to have more weight.
We can only hope. I mean, they're still going to make. I mean, if the rumors are true, there's one TV show a year now from.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, because we don't know what the next TV show will be. For all we know, next TV show could be Snoke. Doubt it. I would love that. But yeah.
That and the Mandalorian Grogu becoming a film.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. If that were still a series, if that were season 4, if the Acolyte continued and had the momentum it deserves, I think, to actually get a season 2. If I mean, that's the thing. We already know that if Heir to the Empire wasn't happening, whatever it's going to be called,
right.
We know that this is all building towards that. So it's still already the films having more weight than the streaming shows, but
I mean, well, I'll
that's
counter
going to
you
be more realized in when it comes.
I'll counter you though and say Donald Glover did say he's still working on his Lando movie, so I don't know how you.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you can do a
Well, not
Lando.
that they're not going to do shows or
no,
movies,
it's a movie, the Lando movie.
Yeah.
So it does seem like they'll still be doing maybe a few less weighty films every now.
That's true too, but I think the thought is that they're more willing to greenlight a show if it leads to a film.
Oh yeah, probably, or it's built off a film, or built off
a film and can generate from the momentum from it.
Like I not to get too off a tangent, but I said to Dominic, it's like if Dawn of the Jedi does great, and people really like side character Jedi Steve, they'll greenlight Jedi Steve the show.
That's true. Maybe will they? I don't know. Well, we'll see. I mean, because here's the thing: I think they're more likely to greenlight maybe something leading between Rise of Skywalker and the Rey film.
I mean, that could happen too. I would like that.
I think they're more likely to, because again, that seems to be the direction they want to go. Just today, Chris Abbott and I were chatting about how there's not going to be much presence for Skeleton Crew at New York Comic Con, as far as we know. And I was kind of getting salty and being like, yeah, because they don't want streaming shows to succeed as much. They want the films to succeed more, and so they aren't going to put in as much marketing for it as they used to. Marvel going to San Diego Comic-Con, Marvel is far more level, far more equal, because they're also able to do both at the same time. Lucasfilm just isn't really able to, and so they'll make the big splash for Mandalorian Grogu that they aren't going to make for Skeleton Crew, that they may not even make for Ahsoka Season 2.
No, I think they'll do it for Ahsoka Season 2 because that's like a pet project for Filoni.
Yeah, they'll make a big splash, but it's still, I won't be surprised if it isn't the splash that Mandalorian season's got. If it isn't the splash that Kenobi got.
Well, that's true. Although it's a Season 2, so who knows?
And of one of the most beloved characters in all of Star Wars. So
I'm actually, it's kind of. I'm actually kind of curious about what Andor Season 2 will look like in terms of success and
Yeah.
splashing because it actually did do pretty well by the end. I looked at
Hmm.
the numbers and it did go up by the end,
Yeah.
and it's had a couple years to be like touted as the best Star Wars ever by everybody and their mother. Um,
That's true.
so but I mean, and also Skeleton Crew is said to be a one and done. So there's that.
Hmm.
I heard the rumor that it's going to be a one and done. So like, it's not
That
getting a
makes
season two because it's never going to get a season two. This one probably was never going to get a season two.
mhm.
Those kids are getting old.
That's true.
Um, um, oh, sorry.
That's it.
Uh,
You
but
mentioned Andor. Might as well
yeah.
give us the
So
tiers.
this is where I made it clear that just because something's low on the tier list doesn't really talk about
Yeah.
its quality.
It's two of your favorite shows are in tier 5 here.
That's true. Andor, Solo, Resistance, and Tales of the series.
Yeah.
I actually would put maybe the Tales of the series with Mandalorian, honestly, thinking about it. Kind of, because they're
Yeah.
kind of more connected. I mean, you got Morgan Elsbeth. But I actually, but I,
Yeah.
but my
Ahsoka.
but but I also would put it here too, because like you don't need to know these things. I mean, I
Yeah.
like knowing Morgan Elsbeth's backstory and kind of a little bit of her background, but like I don't need it. It's not
Mhm.
necessary.
Yeah.
Andor's interesting. So Andor and Solo being on this tier is fascinating to me because
Hmm.
it's the epitome, I think, of execution over concept.
Hmm.
And I just had to get this out now because I've been thinking about this for a long time. Where on paper, Andor and Solo kind of are the same level of like, okay, their backstory, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Andor's a little cooler because Rebel Spy got going on, but like Han Solo,
Yeah.
I don't need to know Han Solo's backstory. That's not even the cool part of his story. Like it's after he meets Luke Han where he kind of becomes interesting. Um, but when I talk about execution, where Solo, at least for me, is just Han's backstory. It's fun, but it's just his backstory.
Hmm.
Andor manages to be way more than just Andor's backstory. It's about, repression, rebellion, the prison system, fascism,
Hmm.
what people have to do to survive, and it just is executed in a way that elevates it beyond just a simple concept of like, oh, here's a backstory of a rebel spy. Ooh.
Hmm.
It's so much more um, than that. So that's just something that I just thought about. And if anything, you watch Solo because you're going to have to know some of the stuff for the paper can coming up.
Yeah.
But it's though all these three are down here, even my beloved Resistance, because they're not that weighty, sadly.
Hmm.
They're do you really need to understand Andor to understand the saga? Not really, no. Um, Although I mean, I could make a case of why you should start with Andor and then watch Rogue One and then watch A New Hope, and then but that's another story. Resistance again. It's got Poe. You get a little bit more of what the sequel era is like, but it's not big enough or grand
Hmm.
enough. I don't know. I mean, not enough to be grand. It's just
Yeah.
not that deep enough to like really get a good sense of what the sequel era is like. I mean, a little bit.
Yeah. I got the circular a
Get
little
the
bit
Star
there.
Killer. You got a little bit of what the First Order's whole MO is.
Hmm.
Solo again, I like it's fine, but you don't need to know Han Solo's backstory to really feel like you were missing a part of the saga, even
Yeah.
though it's about somebody from the saga. And the Tales of again, they're fun. I really like them. They do stuff with like Count Dooku, which I think makes them really interesting.
Hmm.
But again, it's like I don't feel like I'm losing sleep missing out on these. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my sad, like depressing part of them. Some of the again, these are great shows. I love them. Maybe in some ways, I can
Yeah.
see why people do love them because they are
Yeah.
kind of this out of the way, really well made things that like we can kind of have our own little fandom in,
Sure.
but don't feel like and sometimes people are cynical like also because corporate's not really putting the pressure on it, so like they can do whatever they want. Um,
Mhm.
but it's still in terms of like the weightiness of it, they're fun, intimate stories in the
Yeah.
Star Wars galaxy, but we're not missing any sleep. Do you agree or disagree with any of these?
I definitely agree with Solo and Resistance. I can definitely see where you're going with there, and Young Jedi Adventures. Um, is kind of tier 6. You could also say the uh, Tales of Destiny, Forces of Destiny.
Hmm.
Those even shorter shorts. Um, Tail. So yeah, again the Solo. It's fun. Resistance is fun. Doesn't really add much of anything. I think Solo had the potential to, and that's the thing. It
The Lord Miller version had potential. I agree.
maybe. Do we really need to see where he meets Chewie? What you're implying later on, Kira is the most important character in this movie going forward, for other reasons, but we'll get there.
Mhm.
The Tales of Jedi, Tales of the Empire. That's fascinating. I'm not sure it's its own series. Really, it's connected to Mandoverse because of Morgan. It is really a part of Clone Wars in my mind. At least the Ahsoka, Dooku, and Barriss are just kind of parts of Clone Wars, or maybe kind of backstory, side story, but also then what if, or not what if, but where does Barriss end up? Finally telling us that story. These are stories we wanted, but I think with Ahsoka, because Ahsoka is so central, it's kind of stories we needed. The Dooku story really does also function as a bridge between 2 and 3. Well, between, I guess, leading into 2 rather. Um, so yeah, I don't know if it deserves to be that low. Andor is fascinating. Andor not only does it have the potential to be so much more. I think it actually is. I think it
All right.
because here's the thing is
I
in A
probably
New
could
Hope,
bump that one up, honestly, if I were to, probably.
like I would bump it all the way up to 3, frankly. In A New Hope, and here's why, and especially after season 2, in New Hope, all we have are the kind of the action adventure. There's an evil empire, and then there's Luke, moisture farming. He says, "I hate the empire," and we see how brutal the empire is with Alderaan. We do, right? George is writing an adult story masquerading as a kid's story, and so the depth is there. Andor is the first time we really get to see the world as it is. We really get to see how brutal is the empire, what lengths is the rebellion willing to go,
Mm-hmm.
and what at least this segment of the empire or the rebellion that we don't see in the films because they're not at heroic and not that clean. Makes perfect sense that Saw shows up in this, right? Makes perfect sense. We see Luthen and everything he says and does and willing to do. It really fleshes out and builds out the world in a way that is not, and that's the fascinating thing. It's not nerdy in the in the kind of weird way.
I would be saying in a way Ahsoka's kind of a little nerdy. And I love Ahsoka, but she's
Yeah,
still a little
Ahsoka's more nerdy, but Ahsoka, that's the thing, is Ahsoka is a more character story. So it's part and parcel. It's what good sci-fi space opera does. Andor is might as well be our real world, right?
That's true.
and so Andor does have this weight of saying, yes, there is the gleaming heroic story that George told, but just around the corner, there's also, where did the grit and dirt come from? What just happened just before to lead us to make the way for, make the way for Jin, to make the way for Luke, and so,
I,
the Andor definitely does. I mean, I talk about a show leading to a film. Andor definitely clearly leads to Rogue One, leads to A New Hope. So
I mean,
I can see why maybe it's done only because we have half a show.
that's true. I mean, you're right
It
about
is a
season 2.
smaller show. It is just Andor so far, but we'll see.
We got Mom Mothma a little bit. That's kind of our one link to the bigger stuff. I mean, I might be right, and if season 2 goes the way I think it's gonna go,
Mhm,
I think I will agree. I think we should bump this up.
mhm,
I might even bump it up anyway, even if it's just
mm,
uh to because I think it's you're right about those things.
yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, maybe we should revisit this year from now, or
we
whenever
should
Andor season 2 is done, or whatever.
we should revisit this every now and then when we get some more installments. Maybe not every
Yeah,
year, but
yeah,
definitely this year, because I actually have a whole thing of why you could actually start somebody with Andor as your first
yeah.
Star Wars. Um, in my own, I call it the Andor viewing. Um,
Yeah.
so
So,
we'll just kind of get to the next, kind of skip out, go through the next two real quick. Young Jedi Adventures, Visions, Rebuilt the Galaxy.
yeah.
They're don't get me wrong, they're really cool. They're good for what they are. Obviously, you
Mhm.
know, again, I think Visions is honestly sometimes some of the best Star Wars ever. It's not canon. It's
Yeah.
not. You're not gonna learn about the wider mythology of the world. You're there if you just want some thematics.
Mhm,
Yeah, and Young Jedi Adventures again. It's like it's really good for a Disney Junior show with Star Wars.
mhm.
But and again, like in the Lego stuff again. But it is like if you don't watch it, you're not really. I don't want to say you're not missing out because you are missing out on some really good
Yeah.
stuff. But in terms of like our thought experiment, yeah, you can skip. You can watch these last. You're fine.
Yeah.
Um, so let's just start though. So now that you've watched all of the screen canon, let's get to paper.
Mhm.
All right. So this was interesting making this list because I
Yeah.
wasn't quite sure about any of it, and I kind of was just going off
Mm,
my vibes and my feels and kind of my own thoughts of what weight
mhm.
was. Because like with paper, with screen, it's so much easier. It's a little more easier, right? You start with the saga, and bada boom.
Yeah.
But what I did with paper canon is I did think about its connections to the saga, but I also kind of thought of paper as its own ecosystem, the paper universe, right? Because
Interesting, yeah.
because stuff from paper kind of appears more in paper. I'm saying paper a lot, and kind
Yeah.
of like you should read this first because this character is going to be showing up in a bunch of books and comics and kind of as we kind of build the paper
Yeah.
side of the universe. So with that being said, yeah, tier 0, the saga. You probably start there again.
Yeah.
Read the novelizations. There you go. Read the novelization of all this
Yeah.
stuff. Well, maybe not. The New Hope one won't make much sense, but the sequel trilogies would.
Definitely read the Phantom Menace one.
Oh, yeah,
Terry
it's pretty
Brooks.
good. Yeah, that's good stuff.
And Revenge of
Um,
the Sith.
oh
Witness.
yeah,
Yeah.
read that. But
Yeah.
in terms of paper, I put the High Republic Initiative, Fallen Order video games,
Yeah.
Vader and Star Wars 2015, and maybe Aftermath.
Mhm.
Uh, question
I
mark
think
for
I
that.
added Aftermath in there.
Okay, I mean that's fine. There's a
You have it
question
further
mark,
down.
but so for High Republic, it is kind of just paper, right? It is paper. High
Yeah.
Republic is paper's domain for the most part. Um, it was designed to kind of give free space to do almost anything within
Mhm.
reason, of course, and it dominates the paper stuff. So obviously, you can read all of that.
Mhm.
Um, I put the Fallen Order video games in here because they're video games. I wasn't quite sure what to do with video games because we do consider video games paper canon, and
Especially Outlaws. Especially Outlaws.
and the Outlaws.
Yeah.
But Fallen Order is really good. I mean, they definitely got the core themes of like what the dark times are in Star Wars, and they're just really good stories.
Mhm.
So that's why I thought, oh, you just start here. Vader in Star Wars 2015, obviously, they set up a lot of what's
Yeah.
going to come in the comics and even some of the books. And I guess Aftermath, because there are certainly some threads
Mhm.
there that are kind of also Mando centric a little bit, and some characters kind of come back in the comics. Oh my god, I forgot the Poe comics. I'm gonna put that in.
Yeah.
I always forget the Poe comic. I am so
It's a
sorry.
long run. Long
I
Charles
know.
Ford. Yeah.
I forgot about it. I feel bad. Um, but these are kind of the top tier. Start here,
Mhm.
Matthew. Where do you start on the ones I put here?
So it's interesting because, like, for tier 1 and tier 2, I have some things I'd switch around.
Interesting.
Um, so I do maybe to go into tier 2. The things I'll agree with you on are things that kind of spin off of other things or standalone ish that lead to other things. So yeah, both Afro runs, um, Bloodline, both Afro runs spinning off of Vader, um, Bloodline and Catalyst, Shadow of the Sith. Kind of in, yeah, Catalyst, of course. Catalyst is one of the main tie-in material. That's another whole other category here of actual tie-in material, which we don't do anymore. Um, Bloodline is sort of a tie-in to the sequel trilogy, Shadow of the Sith as well. Um, from in my mind, the weight of paper canon does have to do with how did they organize initiatives together, and the basically the reason I'm really thinking Aftermath does need to be tier one, the trilogy. I mean the trilogy. um, that, but also the trilogy, but also Shattered Empire and Battlefront 2, and yeah, even Alphabet Squadron. Although I haven't read Alphabet Squadron.
I
And then upcoming Battle of Jakku. That was really the first major publishing initiative in paper canon since 2015. Was let's in books and comics and video games tell the story from Endor to Jakku. And so the Aftermath is kind of the flagship run of that. And so Chuck Wendig setting the structure, setting all the beats, yeah, with the story group, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
And so
I mean, we know that he got turned down for one thing.
Yeah. So, but I mean, in terms of, okay, yeah, even that starts small. It does have the Filoni formula with the Wexleys on oh goodness, like on the name of the planet, like on the name of the planet, Akiva.
It's in Outlaws. It's in Outlaws. Akiva's in Outlaws.
Yeah, it definitely shows up in Outlaws. So that it starts small, but then we get into Mon and Leia and Han and Chewie and what they're up to, but especially Mon and Leia building this new republic, and then all the way up to Mon and Villachem, and the things that Empire's End does politics the best of any of these novels. I think even more than Bloodline. Bloodline's great. Empire's End really plays with the tensions that will end up probably getting it before.
I think Alphabet Squadron probably does a little better, but that's not in this tier.
Well, it can be. I mean, it's part of this publishing initiative, but I mean, in terms of to militarize or not, to mobilize an army, a navy to take out the Imperial remnant at Jakku or not, and all the questions behind that about are we becoming like Palpatine's Empire, or are we preventing it, and all that tension that drives this drama that leads, of course, to the New Republic fleet finally going to Jakku to take out the Imperial remnant. Oh, by the way, the Imperial remnant, by Gallix Rax, they go on the Eclipse to the Outknown regions. So, yeah, not even looking ahead to. I mean, it's part of the road to the Force Awakens initiative in a way as well. So, I would definitely put it. Frankly, I think it's the weightiest trilogy, weightiest in the novels. I definitely agree with Vader Star Wars 2015. That's the thing with these comics is that they've served as these bridges getting these characters to the films, and that's the primary thing that they've done. They've told lots of fascinating stories within them. But yeah, hope dies, leading us to Empire Strikes Back, right? That they should have, like we talked about last week, the moment Vader learning about Luke, huge weighty moment.
Oh yeah,
that moment in itself is a tier 1 moment, right? So yes, correct choice to put that in there. I would actually now that ongoing 2020 is done, see on Wednesday how Vader finishes. the way the last bit has brought us to the characters to where we see them in Return of the Jedi. Luke really embracing the wisdom of the light side, the wisdom of the Force. Vader really broiled in conflict, even though he denies it. Uh, conflict within himself, conflict with Palpatine, with the Imperial, with the Schism Imperial. I would put those up into tier one, and then within
Well,
that,
let's see what Wednesday brings before we make a
I
decision.
think, yeah, I think in all likelihood it will. I mean, ongoing 49, which is of course the end of that story, that is let's go get Han, right? To spoil that for you, that's a huge story beat that Charles does land perfectly. She's finally Leia coming, and that's the thing. Leia coming together to say, "Yes, I can be this leader. I'm also a person, and so I can go rescue this man that I love, who's also happens to be an asset to the rebellion." And we know it works out for both the rebellion and for her own relationship.
Right.
That ongoing run does take us there. It just there's these funny things along the way with this whole bounty hunter war and this these sentient droids who want to either take over or just be left alone or whatever. So there are some weird things that happen along the way, but
I feel like ranking the comics was hard because, like,
yeah.
I felt like, at least this is my reasoning, Vader and Star Wars 2015 did a more of a straight line to, while I felt like Vader and Star Wars 2020 had a lot of detours, and not the kind of not detours, just detours. You know, with like this Crimson Dawn stuff and this droid thing, where I felt like this is not really building up to Endor. This is probably building up to a bunch of chaos that's going to come after Endor.
Possibly, or just fun stories along the way, or building up different character along the way. I'd say maybe a better way of putting it is some aspects, some arcs are tier one, some arcs are tier two.
I did not want it to arc.
Yeah, that's fair. That's too granular, but some aspects of it, I think anything in either the 2020 run or the 2017 run or the 2015 run, anything that explores the Vader Anakin relationship is tier one. So everything with Sabe on Naboo and everything Vader ends up exploring there, I put up there because it's getting him to everything that gets him to throwing Palpatine over the ledge. That's tier one, right? Because that's by definition leading directly to this moment, the climax of the saga. And so yeah, I think all three runs do that in different ways and then in convincing ways. If anything, yeah, this Vader seems to be more tied in and probably more enjoyable for that reason. Yeah, I'm trying to think because there's something with ongoing. Maybe that'd be more tier two, almost tier three, because yeah, this maybe gets to your theory and you can see more of this. Vader 2020 is written towards Return of the Jedi. I kind of see what you mean in terms of ongoing being written around Return of the Jedi. If you want to say more about what you think about that.
Well, I mean, Vader's gonna die, so it's sort of like,
Exactly.
there is no ongoing for him. I mean, unless they want to do some weird stuff. Luke and Leia, they're about to end. If we are getting please, those post Endor stories, I think there is something to be said about having them have adventures in the original trilogy era that you can seed stuff in, so that stuff doesn't just come out of the blue all of a sudden, where it's sort of like, Luke versus a dark droid. It's like, oh yeah, remember when that happened? Or if Han ran into Kira again, it's like, oh yeah, remember, because she helped them during the war, and this is kind of the aftermath.
She's still alive.
Some of the random stuff Luke's dealing with at the moment. It's like, well, after he's done taking down the Emperor, he's like, well, This is going to help me when I got to rebuild my Jedi Order. Their stories are, it's like, because this
Yeah.
is the thing. This is something, and, we can get into this, this is kind of a different tangent, but, this is the thing I think we as older fans need to remember. Return of the Jedi is not the end. It's no longer the finale. It hasn't been the finale since 2015. There is now 30 more years worth of story for Luke, Han, and Leia to have. And so their stories need to, it's not like, it's Return of the Jedi is this inflection point in their lives for sure, but it's not their end goal. It's not their end point anymore. They have way more stuff to do after this compared to Vader, where it's like, yeah, this is it. This is it. This is after this, it's over, right? Kind of over. He gets to do some Force Ghost stuff every now and then, and passive aggressive with Ahsoka. But and maybe be passive aggressive with Luke. Maybe he'll show up at the Force Ghost. That'd be fun. Cross fingers, Force Ghost Anakin in some of those comics.
But she's up in Shadow of the Sith.
That's true. But Luke, Han, Leia have more to do after this now. So that's why I'm saying it's not necessarily building to Return of the Jedi, kind of building a little bit more around and forward looking as well, kind of planting those seeds for afterwards as well. So things just don't kind of come out of the blue. They can feel a lot more organic. That's what I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense, right? Luke has to rebuild, or is given the potential to rebuild the Order.
They get to train and rebuild.
Leia rebuilding the Republic.
So and Han gets to do Han things.
And Han trying to figure out how to be a family man and then not.
Exactly.
One last thing I'll say about High Republic is, so there's the Aftermath Publishing Initiative. There's the Empire to Return of the Jedi Comics Initiative. High Republic, here's the thing. High Republic, I would bump down to tier 2.
Oh my, that's scandalous for you. You're
again, not because of how much I love it or not, but it's really not because of the way it explores themes. Visions explores themes.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Simply because it is so standalone in that way. It is so, you're right, it is so self-contained. There needs to be this grand ending in Trials of the Jedi. Needs to come to this great climax that is going to be, Charles was saying, it's going to be in these small little moments, but that are so decisive. This guy, we'll have to change this logo, maybe. I don't know, probably not. But keep the logo. It's a great logo. But because, like you're saying, everything, the way it affects where the Jedi are 200 years later is implied. It's us teasing things out. It's us speculating, theorizing, as the fun thing to do as fans. But it isn't, like I was saying with Mandoverse, it isn't put down definitively. This is what leads to that. Right. And maybe some of the Luminous authors can shed some light on some things about what they're thinking, but even then they had to be a little more cautious than I expected. I was like, Fall of Starlight, Great Retreat, that's happening. It's happening over 200 years. And we see, and that's the thing about the Acolyte, is very important to show us this. And so, the Acolyte is as much a part of paper canon as it is a part of screen canon. It's more a part of paper canon. What am I talking about? It's more a part of paper canon than screen canon. That it's part of the High Republic, and it's not part of the initiative. It's definitely, like you're saying, it's an epilogue to the story, just like the Living Force is sort of an epilogue to the story, because it looks back to the great works. Quinn was one of the great works, just like Starlight, and now the retreat from Quinn, potentially retreat from Quinn. They don't, but the retreat from other places, and also just the general retreat from the Jedi and the Republic being able to deal with these syndicates in the slice as a sign of this great retreat. And so, yeah, maybe I put Living Force into. I don't think you mentioned it, but I think you meant to.
I forgot a bunch of books looking at this
that's
list.
Fair. There's a lot. But it again, the High Republic initiative itself yeah, as much as I love it for what it suggests about the late Republic,
Hmm.
it doesn't have as much weight as stories set during the late Republic, during the Empire. So that's the
Right.
thing, because everything is about the saga. Everything is about how does it relate to the 9 films, and so that's the question.
I mean, yeah, it's why I've always sort of said,
Yeah,
you know, High Republic is sort of like Tales of the Jedi on steroids.
yeah,
Actually, I've never said that until just now. Um,
sure.
because I love Tales of the Jedi.
Mhm,
It's so good. It's an early exploration of what ancient Jedi were like.
mhm,
But it's also a standalone story, got a beginning, middle, and end,
mhm.
and it's set 5,000 years before
Yeah,
the events of the Empire. It doesn't really get into why the Republic is the way it is by that time. I mean, prequels didn't even exist
sure.
back then, so it's sort of like it's just here's a cool story about the
Mhm,
Jedi. So I probably would put. So if you want to know about what the Jedi were like, sure, but it's like
yeah.
you want to know why they fell, yeah, you're not gonna get that answer.
So I
Um,
wouldn't go that far with High Republic. I will say it is tier 2. It's not tier 3.
no, I would
Um,
put Tales of the Jedi in tier two.
it definitely hints at some
I'm talking about
things.
the comic book, not
Sure,
the
yeah, I know what you mean. So yeah, I mean that's why it's 200 years as opposed to 5,000 years, right?
right.
It's definitely meant to have an eye towards the saga the way Tales of the Jedi, the comics, doesn't necessarily, right? So it's definitely tier 2. It's not tier 3. I just wouldn't put it as high as tier 1.
No,
Yeah,
that's fair.
mm,
And some of these other ones, again, that's I kind of put them here because they're spinning off
yeah,
of stuff like Afra. Afra spins off of
yeah,
later. Bloodline Catalyst, they're they're good and they definitely can have connections, but like I don't know, not compared to Vader and Aftermath and Star
yeah,
Wars 2015. Shadow of the Sith was another interesting one, but again, I think that's sort of you probably should read some stuff first.
yeah,
So tier three, I put Brotherhood, Phasma, Leia, Princess of Alderaan, Auschwitz Squadron, Lost Stars.
yeah.
They're good books. You could even probably put Lost Stars sadly lower because it's very disconnected. I mean, it's two
That's
people who
interesting.
observe the saga, but
Yeah,
it's kind of just their personal lives are the story.
yeah,
It's not really about them affecting the saga in any major way.
mhm,
Some of these other ones are just like they're just more contained stories and stuff like that. And then I don't know why I put Princess and the Scoundrel so far down here. Now, same reason for tier three.
yeah,
Honestly, you probably have less tiers here, quite frankly. Then finally, tier five, the Thrawn
yeah,
books, very disconnected from
yeah,
everything. And then non-canon books, Ronin and behind the scenes books, because I don't know, I just put that there. I feel
yeah,
like I'm missing a lot of paper canon because there's so darn much
sure.
of it, but that's kind of my basic overview
Yeah,
for paper canon in terms of like what to read, um,
mhm.
and how much weight each thing has.
Yeah, I mean, there's Lords of the Sith, there's A New Dawn.
I forgot
I
about
think,
Lord of the Sith too.
Lords of the Sith maybe 3. A New Dawn. Here's the thing: A New Dawn is a tie into Rebels,
That's
and
true.
so that kind of bumps it up, right? To my mind, A New Dawn. A New Dawn does what Vader 2017 does a little better. Not A New Dawn. Lords of the Sith. Not that Lords of the Sith is bad; it's a great book, but um, okay, whereas Vader, what's Vader like? 3, 4, 5 years down the road from Revenge of the Sith. Whereas that struggle with Anakin, where's that struggle, with Palpatine treating him kindly and then meanly and just getting into the Sith, the whole Sith shtick of the carrot and the stick that they do. Um,
Tarkin
yeah,
probably is in that tier too, maybe a
yeah,
tier.
Tarkin's in there too. So all these books. I mean, here's the thing: is um, showing that's the thing that these novels, the standalone novels, do is they take these kind of character moments and they say, I mean, the thing with Holiday Graces, you can't say too much that it affects too much on screen or affects too much of stuff that's already been written, but you have to say enough that gives folks enough to write other things based off of it and justifies actually writing the story itself. So yeah, I mean, like the Padme trilogy by A.K. Johnston, right?
I forgot about that one too. I
You
feel
know,
so bad right now.
that's okay. That's okay. I mean, again, there's so many books. There's so many books. Like this is giving. These are examples. These are examples. It's all good. You know, um, though those are some character moments. You know, I'd say that was it Queen's Peril, kind of set in and around Phantom Menace, and so that kind of maybe it bumped up higher because it's gives us a new lens on a film. Um, maybe this is another way of putting it is, a paper story can't change something that happens in a film, but the thing I talk about, how, say for example, the finale to Vader 2015 really changed how I felt about the Obi-Wan Vader moment in Kenobi. Like, oh yeah, I've seen this before. I'm amazing that I'm seeing it in live action, but I've sat with this idea of Anakin fighting Vader within his own soul, because Kieran Gillen told that story too, versus someone who is coming to that story fresh. It was still a stunning moment. Don't get me wrong. Hidden, knocking it out of the ballpark, scoring a hat trick with that one scene. That doesn't make sense, but again, that is what makes. I mean, that moment itself, that issue 25 itself, again, is another tier 1 moment. And so that's what I was going to say about Clone Wars. I got it. Force Ghosts in the Yoda arc.
Oh, I was surprised. I was like, I've been waiting for you to bring that up, but like, I was surprised why you didn't say it. Like,
I'm glad I brought it up. Force Ghosts in the Yoda arc. Anyway, yeah, things that, I mean, that's the thing with Screen. George was doing those things and saying, yeah, here's this another layer and level. Paper Canon can do that too, but maybe to a lesser degree, a less definitive degree. And so, yeah, that's why say Vader 2015 is up there. Whereas, yeah, Darth Maul, yeah, it's great. But by definition, he has to stay in hiding. He's this young whatever. So, yeah, that's I mean, looking at Darth Vader, Black, White, Red, again, kind of almost like thought experiments. Like, let's put this character in this situation and see what they do.
which
So
I
Maul,
like.
Maul, Black, White, and Red. Let's Palpatine sending Maul on these missions just to see what he does. It's literally what a great example of what Paper Canon is. See how he reacts, see what he learns. The kind of how he becomes the much smarter, more formidable character in Phantom Menace that he isn't, in that first Maul comic. Yeah, that's the thing these paper books do. And so, especially if you love a character, yeah, do that. Again, Thrawn is the same character. We've gone back and forth. Is it even the same character?
Yeah, yes, and it's just
Whatever.
it's its own thing. It's like the Grist situation, and like maybe one day Tim Zahn will get to write that Grist versus First Order story.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, the Ascendancy novels even more.
Oh gosh,
they're fascinating. They're interesting, but
no, you're absolutely right.
They're barely Star Wars, which is fine, which is good, but it just doesn't have any weight.
To everything.
Doesn't have any weight on the story.
Right. Oh, well, and I guess since we went
except one exception. Sorry. I mean the canon, the 2017 trilogy, that one connected to Rebels does have some more.
The first one I especially think is,
but again, because the character's so different, he's not a villain in those. It's hard to say.
Right. One more thing before we close out this conversation.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little about just the future of storytelling and weightiness of it all. Because we talked a little about just in terms of like what medium's going to get the weighty stuff. I mean, yeah, I think the films will probably be the most weighty stuff. Whether or not every film is going to be a tier 2 or a tier 2 is I don't think so. I think
Right.
that's almost impossible. I mean, maybe something like the Ray film might be, or
Yeah.
Dawn of the Jedi. I could see that as well.
Hmm.
But if they do a Lando, and if Lando's a bit more, that could be like maybe a tier 3 thing, depending.
Yeah.
Or
Makes
that
sense.
Lando film could be a tier 5. Doesn't mean it's
Mm.
bad. It's just sort of like, here's Lando having an adventure, and it's written by Donald Glover and his brother.
That'd be hilarious. That'd be amazing.
I mean, he said he's working on it, so just a couple days ago. So I
I
want
just
to.
saw something about how he wants to bring more fun back into Star Wars too. It's
Hey,
gotten
I
too
mean,
serious.
hey, we're gonna be loud for some fun Star Wars. But yeah, in terms of the weightiness, um,
Mhm.
that will be it. I am curious what when they announce whatever new streaming show happens, what it will be about.
Mhm.
Obviously Ahsoka season 2 is still happening, and if Andor season 2 with everything, I think it will be. You're probably right,
Mhm.
Master. You should probably bump that up to a tier 3 by the end of that.
Yeah.
And Ahsoka will be interesting, of course, because sort of like that's obviously leading up to a film, and also going to be probably Ahsoka doing Mortis stuff. So that will be the
Mhm.
weightiness of that will certainly be somewhat there. And then Skeleton Crew's coming up. That's like even a Skeleton Crew was going to get multiple seasons, but I don't think it ever was.
No.
I can't see that being a very weighty film. It could be fun and cute, but I can't see it like
Yeah.
redefining my senses of the saga. But
Yeah.
regardless of the medium for a second, I am
Mhm.
kind of curious if again, will they do just 2 and 3s, or will they put them 4 and 5? Will they just do a fun Lando film?
Mhm.
Because Donald Glover wants that. Will Sean Levy's thing that he's working on, will that be a big thing, or that just be
Mhm.
a fun thing? Because obviously, of the films we have right now, the ones I can see being a 2 or a 3 are Dawn of the Jedi and the Ray film.
Yeah.
Because obviously, you got Ray, it's pretty much Episode 10 in name without the name,
Yeah.
and Dawn of the Jedi is Episode 0, Dawn of the Jedi, the most important thing of Star Wars.
Episode -2000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it'll be kind of curious to see until, of course, the one day they decide to break that Episode 10 break glass
Yeah.
emergency thing, where the future stories will
Yeah.
land in our little tier system.
Yeah.
And as for paper canon, it's gonna be interesting moving forward as well, because obviously High Republic will continue. We're getting some time. We are at least getting some
Well, High
acolyte
Republic's
time,
ending.
and it's ending. But we're
Yeah.
getting some acolyte tie-in books, which are kind of the bridge
Yeah.
between those two, even more so.
Yeah.
The comics are entering into an interesting phase of maybe we'll get some higher tier stuff, because we're gonna finally see Luke, Han, and Leia do some post Endor stuff. We wait for that forever.
Yeah.
Um, and then maybe probably more in the 3, 4 camp, and if Tim Vaughn ever gets to do stuff, more 5s.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
guess what I'm saying is Star Wars is going to tell stories, and they're going to fall in somewhere in this tier system. We don't know what
Great.
and we won't
Yeah.
know what. It's chaos.
Okay.
We love it here.
I think Skeleton Crew, the one wild card in Skeleton Crew is Jude Law, his character. He's a Jedi.
Sure.
They find a Jedi temple under the suburban wasteland, whatever it is.
Suburban planet.
Yeah.
Suburban weed.
So maybe, but probably not. You're right. Um, Again, I think Charles Soule, and Charles Soule probably is going to take a break from Star Wars, but he's really shown what the comics can do, and um, what integrated comic book story can do to really build up an era, and not necessarily even in terms of how it might relate to a saga film or whatnot, but you know, for the War of the Bounty Hunters crossover, and uh, and the Hidden Empire or the Crimson Reign crossover, including Bounty Hunters, this comic, right? That definitely is tier 4. Definitely not as connected, but has a way of connecting it in. Han and Chewie set 10 years before, whatever, 10, 15 years before. Mark Guggenheim was in the Slack. Um, the whatever the group chat for all this integrated comic book story. So I can see them really uh, seeing comics as a way of telling this large episodic story, because that's the thing about comics. They come out every month, and they maybe a new book coming out every week. Um, it's why High Republic has used comics to an important degree as well. Um, I do think they're going to keep, the Marvel runs especially going to keep using that to bridge stories. And so yeah, we're getting Luke. Um, yeah, they haven't done much in terms of large, novel trilogies. That's the thing. That's the thing that's changed. They reserved that really to the Aftermath trilogy, and then Alphabet Squadron trilogy. Um, yeah, we haven't done that. Like you said, we might get tie-in novels proper, but they just haven't seemed to do that either. We've gotten look back tie-ins, retrospective tie-ins that have been great, like Shadow of the Sith. It was pretty good. And so after things have been revealed, that's the thing. The funny thing with Bloodline is she had the black box to deal with, right? So yeah, in terms of what media, next week, I don't know what we're talking about next week. There's a teaser. If they do another multimedia publishing initiative, how will that have to do with the film or not? Will that be something else entirely different? We'll have to see. Yeah, again, there's definitely a clear feeling of after 10 years in, they're definitely turning a new page. 10 years in, they're turning a new page, of course, literally turning a new page into
Yeah.
the Battle of Jakku. I will say I see what I did there, but I guess I stumbled into that one. Literally turning a new page with that. Again, I get the more I think about it, the more I see your point in terms of going back to the screen conversation, in terms of prioritizing the big blockbuster films. Because the fact is they just make the moolah the way streaming just simply hasn't. And so they're going to put more money and put more weight in these stories so that more people come to see them. And then also, if more people come to see them, then that will be the opportunity to make a bigger impression on the saga going forward. So,
Well, just
yeah.
kind of again looking at the films we announced, they're all kind of weighty, with the exception of like I guess the Lando thing. But compared to like the ones we got in Celebration, right? We got Ray, episode 10, but without calling it episode 10.
Yeah.
Dawn of the Jedi, episode negative 25,000.
Yeah.
And then Filoni's film, which is the tipping point in between the original trilogy and the new trilogy. And Mando's kind of a prologue to that, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to just assume.
Well, again, that's my point, is series leading to a film. I was saying before. So I do think that seems to be more likely where that's going. Yeah. It may even raise the question, is a Disney Plus subscription going to be worth it?
I mean, I think it's still going to be worth it. I want to see Ahsoka. I want to see the new animated shows.
Sure. I mean, there's new animated shows too.
But, I mean, I don't know why we don't even know what the next streaming show is after Ahsoka in 2027.
Well, here's a thought experiment. Here's a wild thought.
Okay.
You said one per year. What if there's a whole year where there isn't one?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, we don't know.
Yeah.
We got a ways to go before we get there. I mean, it could happen. But I mean, again, it depends on how much they got in the pipeline that we just don't know about. Because
or at least a year without a live action show.
I mean, I honestly think that would have been smarter, because I don't know how live action shows are going to mess with the movie thing, but I don't want to play backdoor business because I don't know people's cycle.
All that means is there are all these real world considerations to why they give more weight to one story medium than another. I mean, oddly enough, I'd be curious to see, just thinking about paper again, I mean, the whole thing about the comic industry Are single issues going the way out? Are they making way for collected editions? Do they sell more? I don't know if that's true anymore. I'd be curious to see how. I want to see the numbers versus, say, the novels, which is actually more lucrative. Um,
I'd like to see that too.
I'd imagine the comics, single issue comics, sell more. Obviously, the video games are more than the screen, but
Well, I mean, we've debated on this and how people
mm,
will probably tell you, as far as
mm,
they're concerned, video games are screen to a certain
sure,
extent. Um,
yeah. But I mean, and like the reason I consider them paper is because they're tied in with the discipline of continuity.
right.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I'm not willing to count out the streaming shows just yet because I want to know like
sure.
what's the concept for the next streaming show. Because again,
Hmm.
we were outside of Skeleton Crew, Andor's still pretty big.
Yeah,
You know, uh, Ahsoka is going to tie into the film. For all we know, they might announce Book of Boba Fett, the Boba Fetting, or Kenobiing, the Kenobiing, or I don't know, a Rose show. I'd watch that. Um,
yes,
I would watch
please.
that
Now I
100%.
need that. Joel, don't do that to me.
Like I mean, if they might do maybe more just characters from the films and
Mhm.
give them expand on them a lot more.
Yeah,
But yeah, again, we have to see. So I'm not going to count that out just yet.
yeah. No, they'll keep making shows. It's just that they're going to be lower tier. They're going to have more be written more with an eye towards a film or to
If
look
not,
back at the film.
or if not an eye towards a film,
Mhm.
because I don't know if they can plan that far ahead.
Yeah,
Certainly, I think films will shake up the status quo of the galaxy a lot more,
yeah.
while
Just
kind
how,
of the shows will be more transitionary
yeah.
things. Um,
That's kind of what I'm getting at, and what
yeah,
I'm the reason I'm getting at that is because I think in 2019 the thought was, oh, shows would be uh have much more weight. This is kind of was what I was saying before, and we don't know if there's going to be movies as much. And then there's this big pandemic that keeps people away from the theaters, and then and only then does the numbers for Disney Plus drop off.
there's a
And
bunch
so
of stuff that happens, but
we're in this transition back to having a priority of films over streaming is what I'm getting at.
right.
Is what
Although
again, this is what you've said, this is what Dom has said
I'll
to
say
some
this,
extent.
I do kind of like that though because I think like to me, shows you get more episodes, you should get more time. I
Mm,
love you, Act Like, but I don't understand your pacing sometimes.
yeah,
That's
no.
some of the, but I think the shows should, in their best, and I think Andor does this too, let you live in the world before you shake it up, right?
Yeah,
Like, I
see what
mean,
you're
I
saying.
don't necessarily want, Ray film to begin with. The New Republic has been blown up by Death Star 10.
Oh
And
gosh.
then, but, I do think that a
Yeah,
show can let you kind of like have your adventure, but like we don't have to shake up the galaxy. Here's what domestic life is like for like a New Republic citizen.
yeah.
Um,
That's a
so
great
yeah,
point. Letting you live in the galaxy more, letting you live in the world more. Yeah,
before the movies then can be like, here's a pivotal point in history. We
yeah,
destroyed the Death Star 2 and the Emperor's dead, and ah,
that's true.
but yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's good.
But yeah, I think we did it. I think
Mhm,
we talked about the weightiness of Star Wars movies.
mhm.
Again, I just want to iterate for anybody listening: weight does not equal your subjective quality or your subjective love for whatever we talked about, right?
Yeah,
I mean, again, some of the lower tiers on paper can stuff are some of my favorites. I love Andor. I
sure.
love Resistance. Those are my two favorite things in the world. Um, but I definitely won't. Well,
Mm,
again, you convinced me. You convinced me, Matthew, on Andor. So
there you go.
hooray! I get to
And that's why we do this. That's why we talk it out, right?
I kind of agree. Yeah, I think Andor should be a tier 3 at the very least.
Yeah,
Maybe less so Resistance. Ooh, it hates breaks my heart. I love
yeah,
Resistance. Um,
yeah. I
but
mean,
yeah,
okay.
okay.
Well, I will say, wait, it can influence your enjoyment of a show. I
Mhm,
mean, that's one of the reasons why Clone Wars is my favorite show ever. But it doesn't have to. If you
mhm.
love a little corner of the galaxy, Have at it. Go for it. There you go. But
All
yeah,
right.
I think it's
I think
good
we're
time to
good.
wrap things up. Again, great conversation, great having these just a little bit of notes, and we went for an hour 40 minutes just chatting about this, as we do here on the Iron Cannon podcast. Um, Thanks everyone for joining, watching, as you were. No Twitter bots. We're glad for that. There we go. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think of which stories are more weighty than others. Do you think we're out to lunch? Do you think we're got something going here? Please, the comment boxes are there down below. They ain't going anywhere. Also, please do give this video a like and a share. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Yeah, thanks for again, Joel. Thanks again for organizing all this, leading this discussion, and stirring my thoughts. As always, grateful for that. Where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID2021 again, JID2021 on Twitter. And of course, the Ion Cannon Pod on Twitter, EYEONCANONPOD. Again, I feel a little bad I couldn't get every paper cannon thing listed.
So many stories. It's fine.
So many stories. And again, there's a great example. I mean, Lost Star is probably low on the tier list, but that's a good story. So, but yeah, you can follow me there. Of course, you can follow me on the Star Wars Underworld Discord. Talk about what you think is the weighty Star Wars film and what you agree and disagree with.
And if there's a story that we left completely forgot about, that you think is the most important thing ever, please do let us know. The Mon Mothma short story. I know our friend Ash is saying the Mon Mothma story in the A New Hope fact box.
Well, there is a Mon Mothma book coming out, I think, next year or this year.
Yes, in February. Yeah,
next year. Yay.
Yeah. So, if you one of the short stories in one of the fact pops is the most important story ever, please do let us know. Make your case. There we go. Or if you just love it and you just want to gush about it, go for it. Go nuts there too. We will celebrate. We always celebrate what people loving what they love. Here in Star Wars. Speaking of things I love comic books. You can check me out. I will get my own books. You can, I guess follow us, of course, Ion Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. And on the flagship at the SWU, and right here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel, Tractor Beam, 6 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Nope, other way around. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Wednesday night, we're talking Horrible Adventures number 11 and Darth Vader number 50 of 50. Definitely, I'm thinking it's gonna be a very weighty story, weighty issue. That's gonna be another oversized issue, I think. So,
oh, good.
Please do join us for that. I believe it's gonna be oversized. I believe it is. So you join us then, and of course the flagship Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific as well. Also around the network, check out Hannah interviewed Diana Lee Santos. Speaking of Morgan Elsbeth, interviewed the actor right there. So check that out over on the Ray side, and of course Tales from Beyond the Galaxy and everything else happening in this in the Star Wars Underworld network. Please do check us out. Again, give this video a like and a share and subscribe to the channel, because you'll definitely get notification for the Tractor Beam and definitely get notification for the flagship. If you haven't already, you can follow me personally on Instagram and Threads at MNEUG1138. Also on Instagram at beaches.foodie, FOODIE. I got some good ice cream photos there. And then, of course, personal in Twitter, NEUG485. And yeah, keep conversations there. Yeah, probably tweeting about soccer. More likely. I don't know. I don't know what I talk about. I don't know what I tweet about these days. Whole bunch of stuff. Anyways, on that note, check the Tractor Beam. What am I doing here? That. But yeah, being a great show. Next week, again, as mentioned, we're going to do some speculating on the next publishing initiative. What might it be? We're going to just run through some options, spitball some theories, maybe come up with some off the top of our heads as we chat. So that is right here next Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific on the Underworld YouTube channel and Facebook, Twitch, and Ion Cannon Twitch. Please do join us. We would be honored. We would be honored if you would join us. I'm going to lift off the weight of these stories. Joel, it's been a good chat. Let's blow this thing and head home.